If you are searching for a podcast about crime relating to actual life events of military personnel, veterans, family members, and those associated with the military in any way, then I have just the thing for you. Welcome to the Military True Crime Addict, where the podcast will be exploring a plethora of actual true crime stories that have not been reported on by news outlets or media. Stories that, upon hearing, you will be astounded by. History that should have been told and reported on long ago. There will be detailed stories that touch on topics such as assault, harassment, sexual preference, abuse of power, PTSD, murder, hazing, and sexual assault. All these stories that in some way relate to our military, veterans, and their extended families. At Military True Crime Addict, they provide a platform for the victims and hear their side of the story. They raise awareness of the heinous crimes and those most impacted. You do not need to know anything about military to enjoy this podcast. Listeners can hear original true crime stories with the specifics of what occurred. Military True Crime Addict is available today wherever you listen to your podcasts. Hello listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of The Cult Vault. I'm your speaker Casey, and for this instalment we are revisiting the Korean movement Shincheonji, a group that hides information from its members from the moment they walk through the door. Before we get started, I need to give some special shout-outs to the latest patrons and subscribers of my exclusive content. To Gareth and Kevin, thank you so much for signing up to my exclusive episodes on redcircle.com, the website that hosts my podcasts. And to Blanche and Caroline, a massive thank you and welcome to the Patreon group. We are now in double figures and I am still overwhelmed by the support this podcast receives from its listeners. Thank you so much to all of you who follow me on Twitter and Instagram at cultvaultpod, to those who have subscribed on YouTube and left a review of the podcast, to all my wonderful patrons and subscribers. You really are paving the way for this podcast to be heard by the masses and for these stories to get out there and to be listened to. I'm so grateful. But for now, here is Delvin with this week's episode. Hi Delvin, and thank you so much for joining me today. We are going to be continuing our coverage of SCJ and your experiences within this movement. So would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yes. As you mentioned, my name is Delvin, and I have been affiliated with SCJ from May 2019 to September 20. Technically, I was never an official member because to be an official member, you have to sort of undergo all of the classes and then go through something called the new family member education. Um, and then you have to pass a couple of exams and then do the graduation ceremony, which is what they call like the Passover ceremony or something, before you can actually be considered an official member. So I was never an official member. I made it through all the classes, and I stopped immediately as I was about to pass over or to graduate. And the reason is because during that ceremony, I know that you have to sign a contract, right? Saying something like, I will never betray SCJ. So all of the members in SCJ right now have signed that contract. And I just feel that if I were to sign that contract, like I would be signing, my name, my ticket to hell. That's where I stopped. And yeah, so for your listeners, I guess who haven't heard of SCJ, it's Shincheonji. It's a Korean-based organization. Um, Many people, believe it's a cult. I certainly believe so. So its full name is Shincheonji Church of Jesus Temple of the Tabernacle of the Testimony. So it's quite a long name. So we could just say SCJ for short. Um, and yeah, so that's basically it how I got started, and yeah.
Okay, so how did you find yourself? Because you've just associated the group with the word cult itself, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how you think and feel about the movement now. So how did you
Right.
end up finding SCJ? Did they find you? Were you proselytized to on the
Right.
street?
Yeah. So I was approached by someone who kind of initially she approached me just asking questions. She said that it was for a survey that she was going to do. So she asked me questions like on a scale of 1 to 10, like how do I value like Christianity or the presence of God in my life. So things like that. And then at the end of the survey, she was like, okay, would you be open to like doing a Bible study? And at the time I was interested in learning more about the Word of God. And um, I was Catholic. I've been Catholic my entire life. And, it just seems to me like there was something missing from being in the Catholic Church. I felt like I wasn't um, getting closer to God as maybe I should be, or I don't know much about the word and maybe I should have. Um, so I was open to it. They said they were non-denominational, and I said, okay, why not? Let's try it out. And by the way, this was on campus. I was recruited on the campus at San Jose State, where I was doing my master's at that time. So I was just there walking, you know, going about my business when she approached me. And so, yeah, that's how I got in. And yeah, for a while we were doing these one-on-one BB, basic Bible or Bible basics classes, and so we were doing that for a while, and then it started getting larger. There were more people, so we were like in small groups, about I would say 5 to 15. It varies from time to time, and yeah, that's before the actual classes started to begin, which were the beginner, intermediate, and advanced classes, which everyone will take before they uh, become a member of Shincheonji.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a few things you said there that I think would be interesting to go back to. First of all, you talked about already having an affiliation with a Christian
Catholic.
religion.
Yes.
So you're practicing Catholic at that time. You were
Yes.
approached on campus. So is it typical, do you think, of SCJ recruiters to go to those types of places and look for people who are already religious and of a certain age group?
Right. So they have a particular target in mind. They like to target university students in like campus, coffee shops, um, and even grocery stores like a Safeway. And I don't know if there's a Safeway in England.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, there is. Oh,
Well,
great,
there
great.
definitely used to be. I think they've been taken over now by a different
Right. Yeah.
franchise. But yeah, we did used to have Safeway. Yeah.
Right. I see. Great, great. So, yeah, they're pretty much everywhere. In malls, yeah, that's where it's also a favorite place they like to recruit. And they do tend to go after younger people simply because younger people are more open. They're not that rooted in a particular religion or grounded in a particular religion that maybe older people probably would. Um, and I think like most young people, like we're still figuring out ourselves, like what do we want to do with our lives, what do we believe in, what's our purpose, why are we here on earth, right? So it's young people who tend to uh wonder about those things more than, probably someone who's older. So that's the reason why they definitely go after young people. And um, whether they go after people who already have a particular religion, I would say not necessarily. I did hear that from a lot of people on Reddit, but in my experience when I was doing the classes, I've had classmates who didn't even believe in God, who were atheists. Some were Buddhists, some didn't even have a religion at all. They just didn't think about it. Right? It's not that they don't believe in God, but they just never thought about these things before.
Right,
So
right.
it could be anyone, I would say, from whatever background that they tend to target. I do see how some people would say, okay, they tend to go after Catholic or those from mainstream Christian churches because they're very good at pointing out what's wrong with those churches. They make a good case for that. So it's easier for them to go after these people, and they don't want to have conversations about, to like atheists about, oh, why God exists, or um, because that would be harder, converting someone who doesn't believe in God
Yeah.
to, yeah, that would be harder than converting someone who already has some knowledge of God, Jesus, who believes in God and Jesus, and knows something a little bit about the parable. So they're not like completely lost, and they're not like starting from scratch with that person, because they educate you, or as I like to call it, they indoctrinate you. So it would be easier for them to do their job if you already uh, had some prior
Right.
knowledge
Okay.
before that. Yeah, mhm.
And
But
so,
they're definitely not looking for experts. They're not looking for someone who are very wise, who
right.
know a lot about. Yeah, they definitely don't go after those people. Yeah.
So they wouldn't approach like a priest or a pastor on the street and try and
Oh
bring
no,
bring them into
no,
the fold.
absolutely not. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So we're in different parts of the world, and if a
Right.
member of SCJ was to approach me, on the street or in the shopping center or wherever, do you think their recruitment methods would be similar? Do you reckon there's like some kind of framework or script almost that's followed by recruiters sort of all over the world?
Yes, absolutely. They recruit in pretty much the same way.
Right.
They go after young people on campuses, on malls, coffee shops, wherever, and they start with doing these Bible basics before you actually go into the real classes, right? Before you're in that classroom, you do those one-on-one Bible studies first in like libraries, coffee shops, etc. So there is a process, and I believe that's true for people who are in Europe or in Australia or wherever. You start with those one-on-one groups first, and then it eventually gets
Okay,
larger from there.
interesting. So the
Yeah,
person that approaches me might say, "Okay, well, meet me at this day on this at this
yeah.
time
Let's have
in
a
this."
coffee together. Yeah, they'll
Yeah.
say, "Let's have coffee together." And you know, they won't even say, okay, let's do a Bible study. Sometimes they'll just ask you to just to hang out, right? So it's
Okay.
very casual. It's very casual. It's not like, oh, we're Shincheonji. This is what we are, and if you're interested, come and join us. No, it's very casual the way they approach you, right? It's
I
just, oh,
think as
let's get to know
well,
each other. Yeah,
starting with the premise that this person that approached you as well said that oh, I'm just doing a survey, are
right.
you religious? And if you say, yeah, actually I'm Catholic, straight away then they know which approach to take with you in terms of, okay, this
I believe
person
so. I believe
already
so.
kind
Yeah,
of knows a little, has his thoughts and feelings around his faith,
right,
so I can talk to him in this way,
right.
and maybe I can invite him for a Bible session. Whereas somebody like me who kind of identifies as atheist, if
Mm-hmm.
somebody said to me, "Do you want to come for, oh, are you religious?" And I say, "No, I'm not." And they say, "Okay, do you want to come for coffee?" I say, "Okay." And they go, it's going to be around Bible study, and I'd say no, thank you, no, that's not for me. So it's interesting because they might have said to somebody who's like, oh yeah, I'm Christian, I'm Catholic, I'm Pentecostal. Oh yeah, okay. Do you want to let's come and compare our notes on what we think and feel about these religious themes? But for those of us that don't identify with a religion, it would be completely different. So it's very
Right.
clever how they're
Absolutely.
how they're
Absolutely.
obviously kind of communicating with people when they first meet them.
Right. Right.
And then how did
They
you
have a
go from
strategy for sure. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah, it does, it definitely seems to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens after your one-to-one meeting? You go to these groups where there's kind of 5 to 15 people. So how many
Yeah.
times did
So
you
you.
meet with the recruiter before they were like, oh, actually there's more of us, you should come along to this place at this time?
Right. So it started with once a week. Once a week. 1 hour per session. Basic Bible studies. Right, and then occasionally they'll invite you to to have coffee with them or have dinner. Um, and they'll treat you. So, if you're like a broke college student, like how could you say no, right, to a free meal or free coffee? So, it'll be, you'll be enticed for sure. And then they'll invite, you'll notice they won't really say, oh, there's going to be a larger group, but you'll just walk into that place of that meeting place that you agreed to, and then you'll find out that there's already like 5-10 people in here. But before it was just 1-on-1 or like 2-on-1 or something like that. So you'll definitely see more people. But the thing about this group, and I guess what separates them from other cults, is that most of the people who are with you during the initial Bible study sessions are actually already members of SCJ. They've been there before, right? And so they're disguising themselves as like someone like you who are just new people, right? But in reality, they're SCJ members trying to feel you out to see whether you'd be a good fit for them,
Oh,
whether you're someone who's not going to challenge them or question a lot of things, right? I mean, it's okay to question, but they don't like someone who will challenge them or attempt to challenge their like beliefs. They want somebody who in the end could be a real member of SCJ, who would be obedient and subservient to them. And so, yeah, I did not find them. I did not find that out until I was in the middle of the actual classes. Like, oh, okay, they were longtime members of SCJ before. So, but there were some people who were like me, who were new. There were those people, but most of them were already longtime members. So, it's an act for sure, and it really was an act because I remember we would have these basic Bible class, and the teacher would ask them questions, and they would say a wrong answer, right, to pretend that they are a new member who like doesn't know a lot like me. So that's the act there, but in reality they're SCJ member. They know exactly what the right answer is, but they're pretending to be just like me. So I don't know if any other cult does that, or religion. They have a very unique way of recruiting, to say the least. Yeah.
And I released an episode last week with another former member I interviewed, and he said that there were names for like leaves and fruit.
Correct. Yeah. So I was a fruit, meaning I was the recruit. The person who brought me in was the leaf, right? But again, you don't know all of this information until you've been in SEJ, like you've
Right.
been in the advanced classes, right? So,
So,
but yeah,
oh gosh.
within their group, yes, correct. They have terminologies for us. Like I was a fruit, and the person who recruited me was the leaf, and things like that, right?
So
Yeah,
you think that you're a fruit amongst other fruits, but you're actually a fruit amongst other leaves. And
correct. Yeah.
you are, I mean, is there a love bombing aspect to all these people that you're around in these beginner classes?
Oh yeah, absolutely there was. They were very friendly. They were they were, they were complimenting me, to say, "Oh, you have great answers to the questions, and you yeah, would really love you to come, to our meetings more, etc." You always felt that, it was just a nice wonderful community to have. And um and for me especially, so I wasn't born actually in the US. I immigrated here from the Philippines.
Right.
And I when I came here, I didn't um have like a group, and a lot of immigrants who come here, like they have, like, okay, a Filipino group, an Indian group, Vietnamese community, Vietnamese group, right? I didn't have that. And a lot of the people who I was with were like Filipino, and I was like, okay, this is my chance to be part of like uh Filipino slash Asian, groups. So
Yeah.
I was down for that. I was down for that. I love hearing about their stories, where
Mm-hmm.
they came from, and like their job, their work. So to me, it was good, and it was also a chance for me to build my network, my connections. I believe so, which I think will be useful for me when I, go to industry. So, um, yeah, they were very friendly. They were very kind. We would have these like we would eat out afterwards, go out for coffees, things like that, and it was just a nice group. But um, in reality, they're all actors. It's just like I'm in that Truman Show. Have you seen that movie with
Yes.
Jim
Yeah.
Carrey?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm Jim Carrey, right? All the people around me are actors. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
right?
It's funny because I've just actually released an episode this week I have a second podcast called The Conspiracy Vault,
Right,
and I
right,
just released an episode on gang stalking, um,
right,
where one person is a targeted individual and there's a group that's conspiring against that person.
right.
Could be through acting or things like the same person walks past your house like at the same time every day and they're like spying on you, so it's a kind of
Right,
it
right,
has a Truman Show vibe.
right.
So this could almost be like gang stalking, or in a way like you have a group of people who are conspiring against you because they're collecting information, they're steering your
Right,
thoughts and your ideas. And if you are with a group of people, and I've said this in the last few episodes we've done, like we're talking about the Solomon Asch conformity experiment. If you're with a group of people who are all in on the big secret and you're not, and you say, I'm not
right.
sure if I agree with these practices or these beliefs, and everyone's like, what do you mean? It's obvious they make sense. It's obvious that this is the
Mm,
only thing that is true. And then you're like, oh, if there's 10 people saying that and I'm the only one that's disagreeing, maybe I am the person that's in
I
the
might,
wrong.
yeah, right, yeah, for
Oh,
sure. There's
that's so
people.
scary. I find that
Yeah,
so creepy.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
So
that
you
is
go
true.
to the beginner classes. How long do they last for before you move up to the next
Right.
stage?
So apparently, the leaves, the people I was with, the actors, liked me, so they um thought that I would be a good fit for them to start the beginner classes, um, which I believe for me happened around July of 2019. Yes, so that's when I started doing the beginner classes
Right.
with them. So this was now twice a week with 2 hours
Right.
per week.
Okay.
Per week, and they didn't tell me about that. Like I just walked to that meeting. I thought it was gonna last for just 1 hour, like before, but now it's 2 hours. So without
Oh
warning, became two
gosh.
hours 2 hours and then twice a week. So it's actually 4 hours per week.
They keep so
Right.
much information from you. They keep so much hidden.
Right. Absolutely.
So
And
so this is you've been in for 2 months now. So it's you used the word indoctrination earlier on in the episode. So
right,
it's a
right.
very slow process.
Indoctrination process. Yes, it's a
You've
very slow,
joined.
subtle indoctrination process, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's one session a week for 1 hour. Then kind of 2 months later, 2 months is quite a long time as well, really. So two
Right.
months later, you're only just beginning the beginner classes, and it's now 2 times a week for 2 hours.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. And so how long does that stage last for?
Well, so there's beginner and then there's intermediate and then there's advanced. I believe we finished the beginner around November of
Okay.
2019. The beginner classes were the longest because it had more lessons. Um, and first of all, to be fair to them, they didn't force me. Like there was no like threat or anything like that. It
Right.
was my decision to come to attend those sessions.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, so yeah, in the beginning, I didn't see anything wrong with what they were teaching. They were teaching pretty much standard Christian uh, material. Um, going or going with the parables,
Mm-hmm.
teaching us what the figurative language means, like what does the
Okay.
word seed mean in the Bible. So that means the word of God. So things like that. And they were pretty standard, like they were pretty much in line with what I've been taught before growing up Catholic. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see anything wrong with what they were teaching. And then, so after each level, beginner, intermediate, advanced, you have to pass like an exam. So there's an actual exam. But here's the thing: they give you all the answers to the exam. They say, okay, these will be the questions, and then here are the answers. And
Right.
so all you have to do is to just uh, during that exam day, you just have to remember to memorize what they what was fed to you, right? So it's not really it's not really something that you have to think. You just have to follow, and it's important for me to stress that out because in SCJ they don't want people who think. They don't want people who question them. They want people to follow them, right? They want people who are obedient, not intelligent. That's what they want,
Yeah. Okay. Do
right?
you think
So I
that
just
that
have to
comes
point that out.
sort of
Yeah.
hand in hand with the demographic that they're targeting as well, with the younger audience?
Oh yeah. Absolutely, because they're easier to manipulate, and the idea of exams, resonates, I believe, with a lot of young people, right?
Mm-hmm.
We take exams in school, right? So it's more a play towards
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
towards
I
young
guess.
people, and when they get a high grade they act like, oh, they're so smart and everything, but what the hell, the answers are already given to you. You simply have to parrot them,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's not learning, that's not education,
It's
right?
so
So I
interesting that it's very clever how they are
right,
doing this.
yeah, and I see some people who are, oh my gosh, I got like 100, right, with all the answers given to you, right? Don't you see what's happening,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's really fascinating to watch, actually. Um, but then again, to me, I gave them the benefit of the doubt during the beginner and I would say the intermediate classes. Most of the stuff that they were teaching were pretty standard Christian teaching, so I didn't think much of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware of cults, and I didn't think this was a cult at that time because they were teaching, from the Bible. Everything they taught was from the Bible, nothing else. And they were stuff that, a lot of them I've learned before, growing up Catholic. So I'm like, okay, we'll see how this goes. So intermediate ended at about, I would say, February. Um, and then after that was the advanced, and was were the advanced classes, and that's where the real fun begins. And it
Okay.
was, yeah.
Well, before we get into that, I just had a quick
Sure, sure,
question
sure.
about
Go ahead. Yeah.
the beginner and intermediate classes. Are they taught by the same person each week? Are there people that take it in turns?
All
Like, how
right.
are these
Yeah, yeah.
people
Great
like?
question. Great
How are they
question. So,
dressed? How do they present themselves? Because
great question. Yeah.
it sounds, obviously it sounds like a congregation, but then
Right.
not in the formal sense of Christianity or Catholicism, where you would
Right.
go sort of, to a church and have a pastor
Oh no. Okay, great. So we were going to this building, which is actually a law office building. So they just rented out like a room there, and that's where we were doing the classes.
right.
So it's not even a real church; it's just like a rented room.
Okay,
Um,
okay, like a conference
and
room.
Correct. And the pastor was an adult. I don't really know his age. I would say early 40s if I had to guess, either late 30s or early 40s.
Okay.
So he was teaching the class, and I thought it was really good. I thought he was a really good speaker, teacher, and there were TAs like to the uh, to the pastor, and they were saying, oh, you're lucky that you had this guy to teach you. He's so good. And I did find him to be a very good teacher, as I said. So he was doing all of the classes until um, March. And if you've interviewed other SCJ people, you probably already know about the corona scandal.
I do not. I don't
Oh,
know.
you don't believe so? Okay. Right. So when the coronavirus first uh, hit, one of the first countries that was impacted was Korea.
Okay.
And it started from the Shincheonji church in Korea. Um, and they were getting a lot of flack from the Korean authorities because they wouldn't, the virus was spreading. They found out that it started from one woman who was a member of this church going to their one of their services, and because they're so tightly packed inside that
Wow. Okay.
church or wherever they are, like she kind of spread it there, and so they were getting flack from the Korean government authorities about that, and but not really releasing their information. SCJ says it's like, oh, it's against their right to privacy, something like that. But the government says, oh, you have to cooperate, you have to give us all this information because there's a pandemic. So yeah, that's when the whole, or most of the world, I will say, that found out about this group, this Shincheonji. I would say SCJ
Right.
is relatively unknown before that, um, before
Okay.
that event. Yeah, with
Yeah,
the
it's
corona.
it's
Yeah,
it's my understanding that a lot of people in other parts of the world will travel to Korea to a specific place to practice with SCJ members in like some sacred temple or some sacred area, and lots of people were going to this place
yeah, they
catching
do.
coronavirus and then flying back
Yes,
to their own countries, kind of bringing the infection with them as they returned home.
yes, and definitely that was true, and um, they didn't want to stop their SCJ
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to stop their operations as first at first because of that, but because of the public uh, media government intervention, they had to. So it's not just the people who were in Korea who were affected, it was also us in the US. Like the entire operations just stopped, and so we were not doing the classes for a period of time. I believe it was
Okay.
1 or 2 months. Yeah, definitely more than 1 month, probably 2 months. But everything stopped in the middle of us, our class in that advanced class. We were already we were just learning about Revelation in the advanced class. So all of a sudden, everything stopped, and for a while, yeah, nothing happened. They said they will just get back to us, and so after that, we were just doing online. It did eventually come back, but it was all online. So all the classes were online.
Okay,
And
interesting.
um, yeah, I guess they had to regroup and figure out all of this, stuff with the media,
Yes,
the
yes.
government, and um, yeah, that's exactly what happened. And they explained it to us, like why it stopped, why they're being condemned. They were equating it they were equating themselves with Jesus in the first coming, who was prosecuted a lot. And they're saying, oh, the same thing is happening to us. We're being prosecuted because we have the truth. And the mainstream churches were conspiring with the Korean government. They don't
Nothing
have
to
the
do
truth.
with the spreading of a deadly virus that was kind of killing off so many people throughout the world
Yeah, they,
then.
they, they were not, yeah, they did not want to talk about that. They did not want to talk about that. They were always like, they were sticking to their narrative,
Yeah.
which was, we have always been um, persecuted. And they've been, in all fairness to them, they've been talking about that even before the corona happened.
Okay,
I
okay.
remember one activity in the intermediate wherein we had to um, do this poster, like each we were put into groups, and each group had um, to create a poster presentation using pictures from either drawings or pictures from magazines, newspapers, and we would sort of like condemn Jesus and play the part of the Jews who were condemning Jesus in the first coming, right?
Right.
But it was all an act. We knew that, right? And the point of the activity was for us to realize that this was happening to Jesus in the first coming. People were persecuting him, right? And so that's what's happening to SCJ now, that they are constantly being persecuted because they believe they have the truth and all that. But the real reason was because a lot of mainstream churches don't like SCJ because of their recruitment tactics. They
Yes,
feel
yeah.
like they've like stolen a lot of their people, their
Yeah.
flock from them, and so um, I guess SCJ is saying now that, oh, it's because we have the truth and they don't, so they're like jealous, right? So they want to stop us. And so when the corona hit, um, they just simply went back to that narrative, which was, we were being persecuted. This is all just uh, an excuse, right, for the government to shut SCJ down, right, because they have the truth in
It's
their minds. Yeah.
interesting as well that the person that I interviewed, Han, I spoke to him, he was over in Australia,
Uh huh.
and he mentioned that he become a leader in SCJ.
I see.
So he actually became a leaf, and he would then go on to recruit people in the same way that he was recruited. And he talked about all the leaves and recruiters having like group messages on like WhatsApp and things like that, so that they could they could discuss the fruits um and the progress that they were making, or concerns that they had about each of these people. And it was really weird, the things he was talking about that they were asked to do. And it was
Right.
only when Corona happened and they went into lockdown, and he said that he had a break from SCJ and a good night's sleep and was well rested, and then
All right.
realized that actually something was very wrong. And he said that he was giving them the benefit of the doubt as well, because he was more interested in the scripture and the doctrine than he
Right.
was about the kind of things that were raising red flags for him throughout his time as he moved kind of through his experience with SCJ.
Right.
So I wonder what impact coronavirus has had on these types of movements. I've said this the whole way through. I wonder what impact it's had in a negative sense
Yeah, I definitely think that it had a major impact on SCJ. I heard that a
Yeah.
lot of longtime Korean members, even leaders, resigned or left after that pandemic hit because they felt like, oh, why would you not cooperate with the authorities
Yeah, yeah.
earlier? Why, they eventually did so, but it was like a little bit too late. Why would they not cooperate with the authorities, etc.? Why would they let their people, be sick or die? And so I guess, yeah, it really did have a major impact on them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I guess that's the reason why they had to regroup. They had to
Yeah,
stop
kind
operations for
of
a while.
probably have to rebrand slightly and all that stuff that comes with these types of groups that give themselves a new name and then carry on like identical to before and hope that nobody calls them out on it. I was talking
Well,
to some.
probably not that they needed to rebrand, but they needed to come up with a story to explain what happened. They needed to come up with an excuse, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
people are gonna be asking, oh, what do you have to say about uh, the people, the members who were forced to attend service and spread the virus? They had to come up with an excuse because SCJ doesn't allow for excuses to miss service. Like, that's number one to them. You can't miss a service, otherwise you will be forced to do a makeup of that service. But the general rule is you can't miss service for any reason, not for vacation, not for sickness. You have to come in even when you're sick. And it was the same thing for the classes. Like, they really strongly encouraged us to not miss, you know, uh, the classes. So, when this happened, the whole Corona thing, they needed to come up with some answers, because the media was uh, totally against them, and so they have to. And the members are hearing it, right? The members are
yeah,
hearing
yeah.
it, and probably the students are hearing it. So they needed to come up with an explanation to the members, to the students, about why this
Mm-hmm.
was happening to them. And yeah, that was, I believe, the reason why they shut down for a while. Yeah.
It's interesting as well because the reason that they probably have said to members you have to come no matter what is because of those situations like what happened with Han when he had that break and he got that distance and he was like, okay, well, I've had
He
enough
was
of a
able to
break.
think. Yeah, he was
Yeah,
able to
yeah,
think for the first time. Yeah. They don't want you to think. They don't want you to be outside SCJ for a long time, right?
yeah, yeah,
And realize what a wonderful world there is
yeah, absolutely.
outside of SCJ. Yeah.
So you've
Absolutely.
gone
Great point.
through
Yeah, great point.
the beginners motions, the intermediate motions. You're invited to the advanced classes. We've had kind
Right.
of the beginnings of Corona. That passes, so you go back to the advanced classes.
Yeah.
Is the teaching style the same? Are they still kind of just teaching different
Right.
parts
So
of the
at this
Bible?
point, right. So we were still we picked up pretty much where we left off, right? The lesson that where we ended before the corona hit.
Yeah,
So we picked up from there, but a couple of differences. So like um so everything was online now, right? Everything was online. And then we had a new instructor because the old one said he was only in America for a certain time and he had to go back to Korea,
right.
and it was because of his contract or something ended. So, but he was keeping in touch with us. He was keeping in touch with us personally
Okay.
through text chat, but he did say his contract expired, something like that, and so a new person had to come in. So he was teaching from then on. Um, and yeah, so we continued Revelation, and then we were only doing it about uh, twice a week, but this time only 1 hour per week, just because of scheduling, things like that. I guess so. It took longer than usual. I heard that people in like Korea and other places, they finished through the entire course, beginner, intermediate, advanced, in just 6 months.
Right.
But they were doing it 3 times a week, right? So we started only doing it 2 times a week, but then the corona hits, there was like 2 months off, and then we picked it up, but it it was just 1 hour, 1 to 2 hours a week. So it took longer. So I believe we finished around July of 2020, I believe. Um, so it was a pretty long time, 1 year, about 1 year to finish all three of the classes. But we still had to do the exams. We still had to take the exams. And then after that, um, so before you become a member, you have to go to this new family member education thing, which is pretty much just, it's after the advanced class and before you become a member of SCJ.
Right.
So you so this time it's they're still teaching the Bible, but it's more of like SCJ, I guess, traditions, customs, more about the history, and what to expect if you're a member, if you become a member of SCJ. So I was already at that um, class, the new family education class, wherein that's when I began to realize that there were a lot of things wrong with this. So in the Revelation part, just go, let me circle back a bit. In Revelation, they had a very unique interpretation of Revelation, right? They were saying like their promised pastor, uh, their chairman of the organization is the promised pastor being referred to in Revelation. He's the new John, things like that. So these were things that are definitely not being taught anywhere else. It's only
Right.
unique to SCJ. So I was like, okay, this is the part where things get different, but I still, wanted to hear what they had to say, I guess out of curiosity. But I definitely knew at that point that they were completely off. They were completely off from what mainstream um, Christian churches teach with the whole promised pastor thing and uh, Shincheonji. But I gave them the benefit of the doubt. And I continued on. So now I'm in this new family education, and that's where I realized a lot of things was not right, and was already enough for me to leave right before I was supposedly gonna graduate.
So
Yeah.
how do they the leaders and stuff, did they reveal to you at any point that they had been members and that they'd been kind of lying to
Oh
you?
yeah, right. So that part I believe was revealed to us around intermediate. So they have this thing called milk versus solid food, and it's in the Bible too. Now, whether that's the correct interpretation of milk solid food, I don't know. I'm not a theologian, but that's the way they interpret it. So they have this thing called milk and solid food. Um, and they're saying, okay, you don't give solid food to babies, right? You give milk to babies. That's how they get their nourishment. You don't give them solid food because they can't digest it, or they don't have teeth. They can't eat it, right? It's too hard for them to chew it, right? But eventually, as they get older, they will be able to eat solid food. So that's the excuse that they gave, right? They were saying like, if we came up to you from the very beginning and said we're Shincheonji, this is what we believe in, then we would think that they were a cult, right? We would think they were a cult. We're just going on the internet and all that, right? We would not be able to understand where they're coming from. So it's only through their after undergoing through their indoctrination process that we will be able to understand what they were teaching. It's only after drinking the milk, right, being indoctrinated, that eventually we will come to a point that, oh, we will now be able to consume solid food. We will now be able to understand why they were doing this to us, why they need to do us. And now we would be able to understand what Shincheonji is and all that. But
So
it's all BS. It's all an excuse, right?
when is
The
it
real
revealed to you that this is SCJ itself?
It was during Revelation wherein the Shincheonji was revealed. So they were posing as a non-denominational Christian organization all the way until the advanced class. And it was just in the advanced class where it was revealed to us that this is SCJ.
Right.
Yeah. And um yeah, that's basically.
A quick message from one of this week's sponsors. This week we have been supported by Alex Bloom at Disturbed Law. The green-eyed woman has a hunger. She's a young sociopath with a pathological need to kill. The only problem is, each time she satiates this desire, her victims are somehow being reanimated into nightmarish monsters. Follow the episodic animated series available on YouTube today. With short segmented videos, this story is told in a compelling way, with the audio serving all the functions of a brilliantly written audiobook to the animations that complement this spooky storytelling. Season 1 is available today with 12 short episodes that will answer the questions: who is the green-eyed woman? And who is reanimating her victims? Find out today by visiting www.disturbedlaw.com or find the episodes on YouTube on the Disturbed Law channel. There's just so many lies, or
there's a lot of lies.
Of
absolutely. Absolutely. And I did question them about that, about like, why do you feel the need to lie to evangelize? And they pointed me to a Bible verse that I don't remember the exact verse, but it was saying something like, in order for me to it was one of the apostles who wrote it, that in order for me to um, acquire a Jew, meaning make the Jew become one of us, I must become like a Jew.
So you know what? I think Hans said exactly the same thing. It was justified to him with a piece of scripture. Yeah, it's probably the same thing.
They pointed me to that verse, and they asked me, "It's referring to evangelism, don't you think so?" And I believed it because I believed it was referring to evangelism, that the methods, or at least some of the methods that the apostles used to evangelize Jews at the time was to become like one of them, to pretend that they were one of them, befriend them so that they could gain their trust. And it did make so much sense. And in all fairness to them, right, in all fairness to SCJ, they have a way of explaining things that is logical, very logical. Everything had a reference in the Bible, right? In universities, that's what we're taught. When we're asked to write a paper, cite your references, cite your sources, don't plagiarize, right? So here they had a reference, they had a biblical reference for everything they would say. So that's the appeal to younger people as well. That and everything was from the Bible.
Yeah, the more legitimate.
But then again, it's subject to their own interpretation.
Yes.
Right? It's pretty much subject to their interpretation. That's the thing. Yeah.
I guess that's kind of where it's easier and maybe sometimes more difficult to have people on board that have already got an affiliation with some type of Christianity.
Right. Because how could you go against the against the Bible?
Interesting. It's all very interesting. And
how could you go against the Bible, and for like young people who are who don't know much about religion or the Bible, who don't know what the correct interpretation is, you believe what they say. you'll believe what they say because, oh, how could they be wrong? Everything they say, they point to a reference in the Bible, right? But who knows if that's right? Who knows if that's the correct
Exactly,
way to
exactly. But
interpret
all
it?
of these
So
groups will say that they are the ones that
know the truth. Yeah,
know the
absolutely.
truth. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
So what would have happened if you would have stayed, or what would your journey have looked like if you wouldn't have dropped out before your exams and Passover ceremony?
Okay, so first of all, let me just say that going back to where I was, the new family education, and just giving a little bit more background as to why or
Yep.
what made me leave. Um, so I'm not a theologian, right? I'm not a philosophy major. I'm not a theology major, right? So I'm not gonna, I'm not an expert on the Bible, right? So for me, the um, and even if I am a long time Catholic, right? I was born Catholic, I was raised Catholic, and all that. I'm nowhere near an expert on the Bible, right? And they're saying all of these things. They believe they have the correct interpretation. This is the correct interpretation, things like that, right? So for me, the way I kind of judge them was through their actions. And when I look at that, their actions during the new family education were in, it was just more lies, it was just more deception. It was very cult-like in the way they were not that friendly anymore compared to when we started. They were more, I would say, it was more a military style approach to their classes now. Um, they were always saying, "Okay, sit up straight and eyes forward," and all that, and smile. And they were telling us when to smile, and all that. And I just found all of that to be super creepy, forcing people to smile, telling them when to smile, um, constantly reminding people to focus and look at the instructor and all that. And yeah, during their lectures, very subtly, they would always emphasize to break your own thoughts, break your own desires, ideas. It's not what you think, it's what God thinks. And only SCJ um, knows what God thinks because they have the promised pastor, things like that. Um, Imposing rules on how people should dress, act, look,
Mhm.
and to me, all of that was just too much, right? It was all just too much. It was something that you would see from Nazi Germany, you know. So to me, it was too much. Um, so that's part of the reason I I left.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
going back to your question, if I didn't leave and I did sign the contract with them, making me a member, I think it would be more the same. I think it would, and I heard that they treat members more harshly than they do the students because the students, they want the students to come in, right? They were not charging money for the Bible studies, right? And that's something they point out very early on. Like, we're not charging you for anything. The word of God should be free and accessible to all. Unlike what some of the evangelicals, those televangelicals, right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
televangelists, right? They charge huge amounts of money for Bible seminars and classes, and yeah, it just seemed wrong. And they were saying early on that, oh, we're not charging, and yeah, they weren't charging. But here's the thing: once you become a member, that's when they charge you. You have to pay the tithe,
Right,
which
I
is
was,
ten
yeah,
percent.
coming on to that question. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you have to pay tithe, and that's required. That's mandatory. And then what's not mandatory but strongly encouraged are the offerings. There's fees that you have to pay. So
Are you then encouraged? to go out and recruit new members yourself as well at that point?
Yes, yes.
So
And
the responsibility
even
just
before,
grows
correct,
in every way, financially,
right.
with
It takes
your
up a lot of
free
your time.
time. Yeah.
It takes up a lot of your time because all of a sudden it's not just so you're done with the classes, you go to service, but it's not just service that you have to attend. It's like prayer meetings, trainings, evangelism works, meaning
Yeah.
you're now a leaf, you're now recruiting people, seminars, and you're attending the BB classes along with your fruit, right? So it's there's a lot, absolutely. But they don't tell you that at the beginning. They don't tell you that at the beginning.
So that's kind of what life would look like for somebody that continues to stay in SCJ. There is the growth of responsibility.
The growth of responsibility, and they guilt trip you. Like you feel guilty if you don't do what they say. You'll feel like you'll be going against God. You're not gonna be part of the 144K because that's part of the narrative that they
interesting. That's quite a common. Right. That's common thing.
That's why
across,
people leave their jobs for this. People quit school, or even if they don't quit school, they perform horribly in school because they have to sacrifice a lot of their time for SCJ, and it's just horrible.
What about things like labor trafficking? Are people encouraged to go to different countries to recruit to recruit more people in and lead sessions in groups, or is that not something? I don't think so.
I think that's only true for if you're like a teacher, if you're a high level worker in SCJ. Once you become a member in SCJ, they encourage you to like kind of like join a club. There's a lot of clubs, probably like 20 clubs. So in that way, you do something else apart from just doing service or doing evangelism, like you're contributing to SCJ in other ways. So some go into teaching, right? So those who teach the word, and I believe it's the teachers or people who join the international. There's like an international club wherein like they do like international events. So I think that it's only in those cases wherein you are asked to recruit from other places, you are asked to do stuff for them in other countries. But yeah, I believe an SCJ leader would know more about that. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And is there any type of propaganda that's used within SCJ in terms of like leaflets or magazines or books or online videos?
Right. So part of their appeal for students was they were saying we only use the Bible, nothing else. Nothing else. We are not like some of the televangelists that you see who have books and they add to the word of God, because it says in the Bible, if you add or subtract to the word of God, then you're basically committing blasphemy, right?
Right.
So so they constantly emphasize that. So it draws you in, like, oh my, yeah, that sounds logical. Like we should only base from the Bible. But actually, I heard that when you're a member, you are constantly provided with articles. You need to buy books by this chairman, the promised pastor. So you're required to buy books written by him, articles. And so I also believe that an SCJ member would know more about that. But there's a lot of propaganda, absolutely. In YouTube, they have this NHNE TV. So when you search Shincheonji in YouTube, for instance, it's like a clickbait kind of thing wherein, this might be a testimony against SCJ, but if you click on it, it's actually a pro-SCJ thing made by SCJ, right? So that's propaganda right there. They have their own TV network. So I would say most of the characteristics of a cult are they really embody. It's really terrible.
Well, I wanted to ask you if there were any notable experiences that you had during your short time with SCJ that were kind of strange or bizarre or kind of raised any red flags and made you think that it was something wasn't right.
Right. So when they were asking us for to submit the prayers to them, I thought that was really unusual and bizarre.
Right.
And my jaw dropped because for me, for what I know, prayers are for God. You don't go to the streets and show everyone that you're praying. That's not the way God taught
that's
us.
kind of like
Right.
where
And then
you're it's
and
like
then
when people are told to confess their sins to the group and then later on those same confessions are used against them in some way or another.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And here it's not just confessions, it's like what you're praying for daily. You have to post in the chat. And people were doing it and my jaw just dropped. I never did that once. So that was the first time like I kind of like um steered away, from them. I said like I'm not comfortable doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And they allowed me to. I believe it was just, because they needed their numbers, right? As I said, they suffered a major blow from that pandemic. So
It's just
they were down in numbers and they were trying to get new members as fast as they can. They were trying to get new members as fast as they can. So, even though I don't complete all the assignments, I may have skipped a couple of exams, which, I did. I told them I was not feeling well. And I didn't. So I skipped a couple of the revelation exams, but they said it was okay. You can make it up in the future, right? So I believe that it was just because they needed the numbers, because the pressure for members, the pressure for leaders to recruit is just extraordinary. They're always being um, told to recruit, to evangelize, and if they don't do so, they will not get into heaven. They will not be part of the 144K, blah, blah, blah. So it was like at that point, they were just trying to get me over the edge, right? To become a member so I could give them their money. And, it was just
it's
one big pyramid scheme.
Actually, when you say that, it does kind of feel that way, especially when you're given names like leaves and fruit, and then the leaves are going out to, I don't know, it's strange. And what worries me about these types of movements, because there was a technical issue with last week's episode, so I was looking for somebody last minute, an ex-SCJ member to come forward and to speak with me, but so many of the responses I got were people saying I would need to use a false name. I couldn't talk about where I was from. I would need you to use a voice modulation program because I don't want anybody to be able to recognize my voice. So people are obviously very scared to come forward and talk about SCJ.
Right.
So even though
I understand why.
Well, I mean, even though we're here and we're talking about it in a sense that they keep a lot of information and stuff from you, there's obviously a lot more going on. And I wonder how people who are too worried to come forward, I wonder how they are going to recover. And I hope that they have some tactics and some methods. I know that obviously we're talking now, and sometimes people, when they do find somebody that they can speak through their experiences, will find that quite cathartic and quite healing. But then there's things as well, like blogs and journaling and writing. And one of the things that I thought of recently was there's this awesome author that I read her work quite often, and even though it's a bit different to this, it's still quite similar in the way that she has experienced like loads of paranormal happenings and had loads of paranormal things happen around her. So instead of allowing herself to be scared by those things or to let them control her life, she's put all of her efforts and energy into writing books and novels about paranormal happenings. She writes about horror and mysteries, and she writes them for a young audience as well. So her name's Kelly Martin, and she has hundreds of videos on YouTube as well where she chats about books and gives writers advice. She's an international #1 bestseller. So what she has done is she has taken her talent for writing, but also her experiences that could have possibly had a negative effect on her life at one point, and she's channeled all of that into something creative, and she's done it in a way that has allowed herself to take back some control. So I think Kelly Martin is a great example of a way that people who are too worried to come forward could still have the opportunity to get their stories out there in a way that's anonymous, because Kelly Martin might not be her real name, and you know, she may kind of exaggerate some of the paranormal stories in her books in comparison to things that have happened to her in real life. But I think there's a great method there for people in terms of healing and recovery through trauma and abuse, and being so terrified to come forward and speak to me and ask for voice modulation programs to be put, you know, over their voices so people can't be identified. I don't know what must have happened to somebody for them to be that worried about coming forward and speaking.
Right. I think a lot of it is fear driven. Fear as to why people wouldn't speak out. It's fear driven. They think they'll go to hell if they do so. A lot of it is of peer pressure, I think, because especially if you're a university student, probably if you still see these same leaves who recruited you, like in school, because they're students as well. So you still see them, still encounter them. They could be your classmates in school or even family members. So you will still see them. So I guess they're afraid of being persecuted by them. And I could understand that, but I would encourage them to certainly to speak out. Because to me, if like someone you know, I don't think I would be. I would say in my case, I wouldn't. I don't think I would be able to speak to you if I didn't see some people online who were speaking out, sharing their story about SCG.
Yeah, so that's definitely another thing as well. Yeah, to access forums and to connect with other people who have left the movement.
Right. And as long as we're speaking the truth, I don't see anything that's wrong with that. As long as I'm speaking my own truth, my own testimony, I don't see anything wrong with that. Why would you want to block that? Why would if you have nothing to hide, speaking about SCJ, if they have nothing to hide, then why would you be afraid of the truth?
A lot of the people actually that did come forward were still in the movement and were looking for ways to leave. So I guess maybe some of that could come back to that contract that people had signed that you mentioned at the beginning of the episode. Maybe that's holding some weight over them.
Absolutely, yeah. You don't want to go against a contract. So that could also, as you said, hold some weight.
I'm also sometimes a bit reluctant to speak to people who are still involved in their kind of movement or group, because I think sometimes depending on how long or you were involved for, or how how deep you were within the group, I think when you leave, there's a lot of psychological stuff that you need to work through. So I would never want to put somebody in a position where they're not ready to talk about, even though they're ready to leave, that doesn't necessarily mean they're ready to come here and talk to me in the same intimate level that you are, and giving me the same kind of details and experiences that you are, when it's also still so fresh for them. So that's also
it takes some time.
Me.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes some time to heal and to recover. especially for those who have been there for a long time, again, I wasn't a member. I was involved with them for over a year. And I did have some personal struggle within myself after leaving,
Yeah.
right? I did feel guilty. Um, and I did feel, I guess, a bit lost still. If this is not the truth, then what is, things like that. All these thoughts will come to your head. I can only imagine what it must feel for someone who has been with SCJ, who has been an actual member and a long time member, maybe someone who's been there for like 5 years or 10 years. You know, it's gonna be hard. Like, how do you go against your own thoughts, what you already know. So I bet it's a real struggle for these people.
Well, one
Especially.
question I did have is whether you know of any of the other participants in your group that identified as part of the LGBTQIA community.
No. If there were, then they were not open. Going back to the question of targets, who are the prime targets for SCJ, they don't target LGBTQ people. And I think it's just because historically, a lot of LGBT people are not, like, I would say they're not the most devout, Christians. So yeah, they always have some issues with with some of the things the Bible says about, like, marriage and all of that things. And I don't think SCJ wants to deal with any of that. They want people who will do as they say, who will dress up the way they want them to dress up. If you're a man, you dress up in this long sleeves with pants, and your hair must be nice and straight and all that. And I know a lot of LGBT people, they don't want to dress like that. They don't want to conform with a certain particular way of dressing up. And so, there's all of these issues that I think, SCJ doesn't even want to mess with. So they don't target LGBT. Fortunately for them. Fortunately for the
I
LGBT
said that in the last
community.
episode as well.
Yeah.
Like as if they would want to join anyway, even if they would welcome them with open arms. Like, why would they want to join anyway?
Right. I see. I'm a conservative dresser, and so I'm a prime target for them, right? I'm young. I'm a conservative dresser. So, but someone who maybe a little bit more liberal in the way they dress, maybe someone with a lot of tattoos, piercings.
How do you think
they don't go for that? Yeah.
Would be treated if they did come out to their group in SCJ?
As an LGBT?
Yeah, as a member of the community. Yeah. Do you think they'd kind of be shunned or treated any differently?
I believe so. Again, what they want from the members, and this is very important for everyone to understand, for your listeners and everyone to understand. What they want from people is total and complete obedience. If we say, come in this meeting at this time, you should come at this time. If we say, do this, you should do this. If they say, dress up like this, you should dress up exactly the way they tell you to.
Right.
If they tell you to smile, you should smile. Like right now, you should. So they want to control you. That's the thing. They want to control you. And I believe for, like, these LGBT people, because they've kind of already proven, a lot of them kind of already proved that, they're willing to go against society, right, with the way they dress, the way they look. So they don't want to go after those. They don't want people who will challenge the norm, so to speak, right? So going back to the question, if someone were to come out as LGBT, well, I think that the Leaf who recruited that particular member would have some explanations to do
Right.
with the
Okay.
members.
Yeah.
It's like, why did you not know that he or she is LGBT? Like, how could, is your gaydar not
Right.
working or something
Yeah.
like that? They're gonna have some explaining to do. Now, as for what they're gonna do to that member, I don't know, but I sincerely don't know, because um, they really do want conformity within the
Okay.
group.
Okay.
That's very important. That's very important. So it might not go well for them, for that person, if they suddenly reveal themselves to be a member of that community. That's all I can say.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think you answered the question well enough. I just find it
yeah.
really interesting, and any long time listeners will know that I always ask this question in these episodes because it
Right.
seems so old fashioned to disregard an entire community group based on,
I think it's a good question. Yeah, I think
yeah,
it's a good
based on
question.
their
And by
sexual
the way,
orientation or
even though I wasn't a member, I've seen a couple of their like services, and the men and the women are separated. The men and
so
the women are
even
separated.
there with the kind of patriarchal views and stuff, it's
Right.
still old fashioned.
It's still very much old fashioned.
Right. Okay.
Very much.
Okay.
So I don't
Interesting.
think, yeah, an LGBT person would even want to be in that,
Okay,
situation.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
I guess my next two questions before I ask you if you think there's anything we've missed is to ask you what your life has been like since you left and what advice you have for those people who are listening who are thinking about leaving or who have left and are on their journey to kind of moving away from SCJ in the same way that you have.
Well, since leaving SCJ, I would say life has been great. Actually, 1 month after I left, I got a new job um, here. So that was great
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
for me. And yeah, it's just this freedom that you feel of not having to go to any of more of their meetings, their classes, and not doing what they tell you to do. You know, so there is that sense of freedom. That doesn't mean that it's perfect. I did have some struggle early on with regards to the guilt that I felt. I just definitely missed the hanging out with some of the people, some of my fellow fruits, even the leaves, I will admit. So there's that. Don't know. There's friendships lost and all that. But you do have to remind yourself that they're fake. All of it was fake. Maybe not the fruit to fruit, but definitely the
Mm-hmm.
fruit to leaves uh, are fake. And that's my advice for like a lot of people who just left or are thinking about leaving. Oh, what about the friendships and all that? I mean, you must remember that they're all fake. It's all part of an act.
Yeah.
Um, it's all an act, absolutely. And
Okay.
like what you said before, I found it very therapeutic to speak out,
Yeah.
to write,
And
to
what about
blog, to
your
comment. Yeah.
religious affiliations now? Where do you stand with that?
So I guess by default, I'm still considered Catholic.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever changed because um, I didn't pass over. So I don't think I've changed in terms of that. Um, yeah. So I guess that's where I stand. I stand right now, and yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
At least there hasn't been so much spiritual abuse that you've decided to walk away from your faith altogether. Because I speak to
Oh
people and
yeah, I
often that's the
understand.
case.
I understand. I totally understand. Yeah. I completely understand. Yeah, I mean it's like, okay, if this is not the truth, then oh my gosh, what is? Like, right? Like you feel even more lost than you were from before. And I totally get that. I totally get that. I would uh advise those people not to give up uh with Christianity
Mm-hmm.
if they were Christians before.
Yeah.
Because and I always say this, that this is what's wrong with Christianity. This is the reason why, um I also have a lot of atheist friends, and they this is what one thing they tell me, that it's all like a pyramid scheme. It's all like, it's all just like an organization and all that, people making money off of these things. When you see some of these televangelists who have these huge jets, right, living first class, the life of luxury, I'm like, this is what's wrong with Christianity. People profiting off the word of God. It's wrong, it's shameful. And I don't blame, I honestly don't blame those people if they felt that way, if they left Christianity for that reason. I don't blame them, only because it's so rampant in our society.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a disgrace. So I totally don't blame them. I totally don't judge them.
No.
You can believe or not believe anything you want, right? But I will say to those who were Christians or already Christian before they entered SEJ, uh, to not give up on Christianity just because there are a few bad apples in the basket doesn't
Yeah.
mean
Yeah.
that the
I
whole
suppose
lot
as
is,
well.
yeah, I guess, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the best way I can explain it. Yeah.
I think that's a good kind of metaphor though. Is and interesting that people would give up. I understand it as well, because you've got
Right. Yeah.
one person saying this is the truth, and then you join another group and they say, well,
We're the truth. We're the truth. We have the correct interpretation.
yeah,
Right.
we
Yeah.
agree on the same principles, but what
Absolutely.
they were teaching you isn't actually the truth, because we have the truth.
Absolutely.
So some people are just like, do you know what? I don't know who to trust. I don't know who to believe. I don't know what's right or what's wrong. So I'm just
Right.
going to give up on all of it.
Right. You
So
know.
what advice do you have, Delvin, for people who are maybe physically in but mentally out, and are looking to make that leap and leave the group, or people who have recently left and are kind of looking for ways to disengage as much as possible from
Right.
the
Good.
movement?
Great question. I'm so glad you asked me that. For those who are still in SCJ but thinking about leaving, but can't muster up the courage or the
Mm-hmm.
strength to leave, I will say this. Just think for a second. Just calm down and think for just a minute about everything that happened in SCJ for the last few years. Were they able to fulfill any of their prophecies? The answer is no. They said that the 144,000 will be completed by 2019.
Mm-hmm.
It did not. What do we know from the Bible, right? Didn't Jesus say that many people will come in my name pretending to be me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the way you test it is if they say something, if they speak something, if they prophesy something, and it doesn't come into fruition, then that means that they're not the real God. They're not the real thing. They're not the real Jesus, right? So if they prophesy something, it doesn't happen, that's a sign that they're not the real thing.
Yep.
And
Yep.
SCJ has time and time again proven that they do not have the truth, for the reason that they were unable to fulfill their prophecies. Simple as that. There are many examples, and the members would know better than I do because they've been members. They know all of these prophecies,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it didn't happen, didn't fulfill. So how could you say that they have the real truth, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
examine their doctrines and think for yourself. Is this really making sense? Or is this just indoctrination, right?
Yep.
There's a
Yep.
difference between indoctrination and education, right? So, I think that a lot of people who are in SCJ are smart people, they're capable people. They have a brain somewhere. They were just led astray. you know. So, but they have that. They still have that ability to think, to critically analyze what's going on, and I do advise those people to have a serious look at SCJ, analyze, what's been going on the last few
Mm-hmm.
years, and you know, and if once they see that everything is wrong, right? Then just leave. Just do it. It's
Mm-hmm.
not the right thing. It's not the right thing to be there anymore. It's not physically healthy. It's not mentally healthy. It's not spiritually healthy. People think, oh, it's just spiritual. Everything is just spiritual. No, it affects your life because a lot of members who are in SEJ, they don't get a lot of sleep. They're sleep deprived from
Yep.
doing all of these activities, right? They're super tired. They're super haggard all the time, and so it's not good for their well-being as well. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
so it's affecting their lives and it's affecting the lives of people around them. So I would say to those SCJ people, have a good look at yourselves and have a good look at SCJ.
Yep.
And
Yep.
once you realize it's not worth it, then you have to go. There's no reason to stay anymore. You gotta go.
And
Yeah.
you made that decision when you were asked to sign a contract and you didn't want to put your name to something that you weren't sure would come back to bite you kind of in the future. So that was the big red flag for you, I guess. Hopefully there can be more red flags for others who are hoping to do the same thing and move away from the movement. And think critically about it in the way that you've just said, and the way that Han mentioned in his interview a couple of weeks ago as well. He took a critical thinking course during lockdown and realized that when he applied that to SCJ that he really did need to get himself out of there. So I think you've just given some great advice, Delvin, and hopefully some people can take that on board. Hopefully this interview can help some people to realize that they're not alone in their situation,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
they can go forward and make the decision to move away from the group, and know that there are support networks out there. um
Absolutely.
there's the ex
Absolutely.
Shincheonji Reddit where you can reach out to people who have had all levels of experience, have been involved
Right.
from birth, have been involved for 6 months, have been involved for 10 years. There's all different levels of experiences that you can get in touch with people and realize that you're not on your own. um
Absolutely.
so thank
Absolutely.
you so much, Delvin, for your time this
Yes.
evening. I really, really appreciate you coming forward and giving me your story and allowing me to sit here and listen and question and just get to know you and your experiences. I'm so thankful and appreciative.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I feel that if I could just help, just one person get out of this, then everything that I've been through in SCJ would not have been in vain if I were, to be able to help someone
Mm-hmm.
not get deceived. So thank you for
Absolutely,
giving me the
absolutely.
platform, the opportunity to speak with you
Oh, it's
and your
absolutely
listeners. Yeah.
absolutely my honor, and I think that if we could have that effect with all of these episodes that I release on a weekly basis, if they reach just one person, then coming forward
It
and
would be a success. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely
Absolutely. Yeah.
fantastic, Delvin. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much. I'll
Yes.
speak to you
Thank you so
soon.
much. Yes. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye bye.
That is the end of this week's episode. To get in touch, you can find me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter and Instagram at cultvaultpod. I'm always looking for more people to tell their stories, so if you think you have one to share, then please get in touch because I would love to hear from you. I'm your speaker, Casey, and this has been the Cult Vault.